last time I had dinner with my family gathered around one table, my mom wanted to play a game, kind of a little thought experiment. She said, "What would you do if you won the lottery?" Now, first of all, in order for me to win the lottery, the winning Powerball ticket would have to blow through the window of my car just as the numbers were being read on NPR. So I think that reduces my chances somewhat. But it's an interesting thought experiment. We often associate winning the lottery with having all of our dreams come true, having all of our wishes fulfilled. What would you do with the winnings? And you can extend this thought experiment to anything in your life. What if you woke up tomorrow and the thing that you most desired had come true? What if, indeed, you had won the lottery? What if a relationship that has been long broken, you woke up and found that it had been mended? What if that thing that you hate the most about your body, you woke up and found that it had been transformed? What if you woke up and you found yourself to be the most famous pastor in America and the cover model for Christianity Today magazine? Maybe that's not everybody's fantasy, I don't know. It makes me think of that movie, the original version of the movie Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with the wonderful Gene Wilder. You remember that movie? At the very end, Willy Wonka is speaking to the last surviving, or at least remaining child in the tour of the magical chocolate factory. And he has just handed Charlie the keys to the kingdom. Charlie has, in effect, won the lottery, and you know he'll never be poor or hungry again. And Willy Wonka says, "Remember, Charlie, don't forget the tale of the man who got everything he ever wanted." And Charlie Bucket says, "What happened?" And Willy Wonka says, "He lived happily ever after." Happily ever after. It's the story we think we're chasing. But what we don't know is what happens next. What happens next? If all of our wishes are fulfilled, if all of our desires are realized, if all of our fears are addressed, what happens next? Well, I say life offers us some very interesting case studies of these very things. Life has a way of letting us know what happens when all of our wishes are made true. I was looking it up this morning, and I learned a startling statistic that lottery winners, in fact, people who win large sums of money, are statistically more likely to declare bankruptcy within 3 to 5 years of winning the amount. In fact, some groups speculate that it may be as high as 70% of all people who win large sums of money in the lottery will declare bankruptcy between 3 and 5 years. I find this to be a little shocking. And of course, we don't have to look very far to find lots and lots of lists of celebrities in every possible arena and discipline. People who are beautiful, famous, wealthy, who have the most enviable lives that we could have imagined, who have experienced their own faults and failures, their bankruptcy, divorce, arrest, ridicule, bad plastic surgeries, the list goes on and on. What all of these folks have in common is that they have lives that many of us would have at one point called enviable. Who doesn't want to be in the position of suddenly standing with extra millions? Who doesn't want to be the person who's on the cover of People magazine as the world's most beautiful pastor? Who doesn't want to have these things? And yet we see that sometimes getting the thing that you want just isn't enough, because there's always what happens next. Another favorite movie of mine, and I think it's been out long enough that I don't mind spoiling it for you a little bit, is The Princess Bride. Great film, great film. If you've never seen it, it's one of the most fun movies I have ever seen, and I watch it every year for the last 20 or so. And it is fresh to me now as it was when I first saw it. At the end of the movie, the handsome pirate rescues the beautiful princess with the help of the giant and the swordsman Inigo Montoya. Inigo Montoya, who has been bent on revenge, getting vengeance for the death of his father from the man who killed him for so many years, that when he finally realizes his goal of vengeance, as they all ride off into the sunset, into the happily ever after, the handsome pirate says, "What are you going to do next?" And Inigo Montoya says, "You know, I don't know. I've been in the revenge business for so many years. I hadn't really thought about it." This gospel today asks the question of what happens when we get what we really want, and what happens when our needs are not being met. I think it is so interesting and even amazing that Jesus takes the two things and puts them together and shows us that they are deeply, intimately linked. But I want to illustrate this with one more story. Yesterday, our vestry met with members of vestries from all over the northwest region of this diocese. We had a collaborative vestry retreat up at Camp Washington. It was a wonderful day. I have to say, I came away from the day just feeling really refreshed and filled up with the joy of meeting other people, the optimism of what's happening around our diocese, and just filled with excitement about what we can do next. We had a great panel of speakers. And one of them was the Reverend Mary Gates. Some of you may know her. She's the priest in charge at All Saints Cornwall. She told a really good story about a movie, and I don't remember the title of the movie, unfortunately, but when I describe it, maybe it will sound familiar, and one of you can tell me later what it was. It's a story about a guy who comes home from World War II, and he and his young wife are starting out in life, and he decides that he doesn't want to go to college anymore to fulfill his lifelong dream of becoming a teacher, but he wants to quit school and become a car dealer because he feels like he can make so much more money. And in making all that money, he can take care of his family better, and he can have more prosperity, and the fear that he has that there'll never be enough will go away. And his wife is really worried that he's cashing in on his dreams for something that may be a little bit less than what he wanted. And she says, "Here, take a silver dollar out of your pocket. Give it to me." And he says, "Why?" And she takes the coin, this $half dollar, I should say, and she puts it up right next to his face, right in front of his eye. And she says, "What do you see?" And he says, "A $half dollar, it's right here in front of my face." And then she pulls it out here. She says, "Now tell me what you see." He says, "Well, I still see the $half dollar, but I see you and our children and our community and our home." She said, "Exactly, you're so focused on money that you're not looking at the bigger picture." That illustration really struck a chord in me. We hold our desires and our fears so tightly, so close to our face, that we're not even aware often of how much they block the view of other things. In our gospel today, Jesus delivers a sermon on a plain. We're used to the phrase Sermon on the Mount, which is the way that the author of the Gospel of Matthew tells the story, that Jesus is up on a hillside so he can project out more easily. But in this version, Jesus is on a plain. In Luke's Gospel, everybody is on a level playing field. We are all equals starting out in this story. In some ways, I like that even more, that Jesus is right there on the ground with us, one of us at our level, and that every person that comes to see him is on the same level. And the gospel tells us that people came from all over, from Judah, from Judea, from the east, from the west, from the north, from the south. Everybody came, and everybody came with their own fear and their own desire held closely in front of them. It says that people came wanting healing, that they wanted release from the demons that plagued their lives. And I think nothing has changed since the first century in Palestine. We all come to Jesus with the same vision. And what happens? Well, first of all, Jesus does the work he's called to do. He addresses their immediate needs, their immediate concerns. Are you hurting? Are you broken? Are you plagued by things that you cannot eliminate on your own? That's what I'm here for. The first act of Christ's love is to heal, to make sure people have what they need. Over and over again in our Gospels, we'll see that this is a Jesus who doesn't just say high and lofty things, but is addressing the problems on the ground as they come. And what does the Gospel say? That everyone who came, everyone who sought healing, was healed. But that's not enough, because there's an afterward. Just like our friend Inigo Montoya, what happens next when the thing that is closest to you gets resolution, is satisfied, is realized? The next thing he does is lays out a blueprint for how we live our lives. I'm so appreciative that God has been so clear with us about what is valuable and what isn't. That no matter what the circumstances of our lives are, if we're up, if we're down, if we're hungry, if we're full, if we're rich, if we're poor, if we're well, if we're hurting, that there is still a centering blueprint for how we live and order our lives. We call it the Beatitudes, the blessings. And Jesus says, wherever you are is blessed. I think that's extraordinary, because who would say, blessed are you who are hungry? Because if you have ever worried about where your next meal is from, that does not feel like a blessing. He says, blessed are you who are hurting. Because if you have been in chronic pain, you know that that does not feel like a blessing. Blessed are you, in Matthew's gospel, the phrase is hunger and thirst for righteousness. Because if you have been in a system where you cannot get justice, you know that that does not feel like a blessing. It does not feel like the peace that passes understanding. It feels rather like the opposite. And Jesus gets our attention by saying the thing you think is a curse is working more in your favor than you could ever know. How can that be? I think that maybe Jesus is talking about something that the great theologian, author, academic, teacher, Henry Nouwen talked about. Nouwen was an amazing man, Dutch Roman Catholic priest, and he had a lot to say about pastoral care and what it meant to be the hands and feet of Christ in the world. In his 1972 classic book, The Wounded Healer, Henry Nouwen says that Jesus is God's wounded healer. That we say that by Christ's wounds we are healed. That Jesus is on that same plane with us, on the same level with us. He is sharing our experience. And in his wounding, we know joy. In his wounding, we experience transformation. And it wouldn't be the same if Jesus hadn't been down there on the same level with us, walking with us, living with us, having the same kinds of problems that we have. And in his wounds, we know that we have been loved, we have been heard, and that we can experience the fullness and the transformation of resurrection. And it is through our wounds that other people will know healing. It's through our own areas of pain that we can look inside and say, I know what you're going through. I have been there myself. All of us are walking wounded. All of us have the places in our lives where we have been cracked open and hurt. And we all have those places that do not heal properly. And it feels like it's something we should be ashamed of, that we should cover up, that we should try and ignore, try and mitigate, try and smooth over the top, try and say, everything is fine. I am fine. The fact of the matter is, a lot of times, we don't feel fine. And just scratch the surface, and there it is. And Jesus says, because by your wounds I can heal. Blessed are you who are hungry, because in a Christian community, in a Christ-based community, you should know what it is to be full. And you can take that feeling of hunger and turn that into action. Blessed are you who have experienced injustice, because you can take that knowledge of what it is to be in an unjust system and turn that around to reach out a hand for someone else. Blessed are you who have pain, because you are the ones who can help other people understand what it is to be in pain. You can be the one to reach out. By your wounds, I will heal. Blessed are you. Wow. Now, in Luke's gospel, we have another side to this reading, the curses. It is very much a biblical thing to have a blessing and a curse. And it makes me ask, gosh, Jesus, is wealth so bad? Is it so wrong to be comfortable? I would love to go on vacation this year. Is that a wrong thing to want? And the short answer is no, of course not. But we have to be sure that we're not confusing the fullness of life, material abundance, with God's blessing. That, like Inigo Montoya, we're not satisfied with ticking off a box that we think is going to make us comfortable, that we think is going to make us satisfied. When we experience the relief from the things that hurt us, it's our job to keep moving, to keep passing it along. If we're here to be the body of Christ, then it's in the interest of our shared humanity to both act from our wounds and know them as blessings, and act from our abundance and know that that's not the end of the story. All of us are here on the plane with Jesus. All of us come with a need for healing. All of us come with our fears, our desires a little bit too close. And yet, when we look out together and see, who do I see out there? I see Sue and Joel and Marina. I see all of us together. It puts my fear and my desire in proper perspective. It helps me know that when I look at this community, everything I need is right here. And when you look around, you can see that in our variety of gifts, our variety of assets, our variety of wounds, our variety of healing, everything we need is right here. And if it's not right here in this room right now, then it's in our wider community. And if it's not exactly in our wider community in this moment, then it's in the fullness of Christ's community across the globe. That's what it means to be part of the body of Christ. That we participate always in the way that God offers healing to the world. That we can draw on those resources because we all share the same wounds. And that all of us, every one of us, is on the plane together. And that we can access God's healing, God's love, and continue the work on and on. I worry a lot of times. Sometimes I think, am I doing enough to save the world? You go into work like this because you want things to be better, you want people to be well, you want things to be whole. But the truth of the matter is, I can't save the world. It's not really my job. It's God's job. My job is to recognize my own strengths and weaknesses, take account of my own wounding and my own gifts, and say, all of this whole pile of Tuesday, God, I offer it to you. Do with it as you will. That's our call. I'm down here on the plane with you, with Jesus, and with everybody who shares in this common body of Christ. In the name of God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit.